start by asking you all to take a moment and look at this picture, this painting of the banyan tree, and tell me, can you put a number on the biodiversity that you see in this picture? Very quickly, what's the number? Can I hear some numbers? That's ambitious. 7, 6, 3, 10, okay. All right. 15, that's interesting. I want to know how you did that. We'll talk about that later. But if you can carefully look at this spider that's hidden here and the fig wasps that go inside the fig fruit while it is still a flower, there are 15 species in this picture. But tell me, how many of you also counted the number of interactions between species as biodiversity? We have more than 15. Anyway, even if you didn't, imagine doing the same exercise for this. We don't have the time for this. But this is biodiversity. The complexity that emerges as something more than the sum of parts when a variety of organisms that have evolved over millions of years on Earth interact to form ecological communities that are so different across time and space. I am an ecologist, and I am driven by the curiosity to understand the what, where, why, and how of biodiversity. But I didn't always start out this way. As a kid who loved biology, I was told, study medicine. So I did that. But somewhere in maybe the first or the second year of my medical college, perhaps due to a lingering sense of dissatisfaction with what I was doing or where my life was going, I took a walk in a forest. And there, this flash of scarlet went by. I had no idea what this is, and it was so beautiful. So I found this old thumbed copy of the Book of Indian Birds by Dr. Salim Ali, a renowned ornithologist, and was thus introduced to the scarlet minuet. It's beautiful, right? But the scarlet minuet, I like to think, got me down this path of trying to know more and more about nature's workings. And so I finished my medical degree and then decided that I wanted to do a master's in wildlife biology and conservation. My family was very unhappy, I can tell you that, but things turned out okay. I'm here, right? And during my master's thesis, I went to study this really endearing and endangered monkey called the lion-tailed macaque. Has anyone here heard of this? This lion-tailed macaque is found only in the evergreen forests of the Western Ghats of southern India. And it's very special because it eats mostly fruits and some insects. So while I was following this troops of monkeys day in and day out, up hills and across valleys, I started seeing the forest for the trees that this monkey was interacting with. Like this beautiful and magnificent Cullinia ixarelata. This tree produces these very funky fruits, which are these giant seeds, carbohydrate-rich seeds, but they are no pulp, and it's encased in this terrible spiny casing, which must take a lot of energy to make. So that got me thinking, why is this tree doing this? It turns out that the seeds develop really slowly and they're very costly to make. And so the tree needs to protect it in order to make sure that it develops to the full potential so that it can disperse and produce new trees. But then I started thinking, okay, do all trees do this? Do they make similar seeds to guard their seeds? Turns out, no. When you look at the forest, when you look at different species of trees, they all seem to be doing many different things. You have an amazing array of shape, form, and function. And this is true not only of seeds, but also of leaves, stem, and roots. And these characteristics, what we call traits, actually help each species do something slightly differently, be slightly different from other species, and thereby maintain itself, its own population in a community of species. But these traits are also important for the way tree species interact with other organisms. And I'm going to tell you what I hope is an interesting story. Now, some trees, you saw in the last picture also, make seeds that are really tiny. And those trees make many seeds, much more than the number of seeds made by trees that make these large seeds. So if I were to ask you, if you went to, in this forest for any given tree, how many offspring do you think, or how many seedlings do you think the large seeded versus small seeded is going to make? Or which one is going to make more seedlings? You would think that the small seeded ones would make more seedlings. Am I right? Turns out that's not right. And this control of the numbers of, the small seeded species taking over happens because of pathogens like these fungi, which attack and kill seeds, and therefore bring down the numbers of anything that is too abundant or too numerous. And the way this happens is in two ways. First, these small seeds are in large numbers, so they are in high densities. And we know, especially from COVID-19 that happened, disease spreads in crowds, right? There's another reason. When the tree is making small seeds, it's trying to disperse its seeds as far as possible into as many places as possible. But it's not endowing each seed with the ability to do as well as a large seed. So it doesn't have the defenses that can allow it to withstand the pathogens that might attack it compared to a large seed. And so we see that even though there are many, many small seeds, the number of seedlings are fairly equal, and this keeps the community diverse. And experiments show that in cases where you can remove the pathogens, remove the fungi, actually the number of small seeded seedlings just explode and start pushing out or keeping away these large seeds. Why does this matter? Because eventually we see that where there are pathogens, where there are these fungi which are keeping things under control, you have larger diversity of seedlings compared to a situation where the fungi are not there or they are not able to do their job, right? So who in this room would have thought, tell me, raise your hand if you knew that fungi, who we think of as pathogens, are actually critical for plant diversity to be maintained in ecological communities. You knew it. Excellent. Okay. But I hope that this is a new fact that I have shared with you today that you can go back and ponder as to how diversity works in nature. But this entire story that I told you is that of one interaction between the fungus, which is a pathogen, and plants. But all these plants, while seemingly rooted, while seemingly still, while seemingly just a background of green and brown, for those of us who are not looking, this is called plant blindness, they engage in a myriad of interactions, in a dance, I would almost say. So plants can form partnerships with other fungi called mycorrhizae, which are beneficial to the plant in taking up nutrients or in withstanding drought from the soil. And next time we meet, maybe I'll have some secrets to share about plants and their partnerships, the two-step tango that they do with mycorrhizae. Plants also create these partnerships with animals that eat their fruits and seeds because they want those seeds to go far away and escape the crowding that we spoke about, which then comes or limits their numbers or prevents them from being successful, right? And all of these interactions are what makes biodiversity what it is. It's not just one or two species, but it is how these species interact to come together, to be together, and to form communities that really makes biodiversity. But many of these interactions are disappearing. Today we live in a world that is overwhelmingly dominated by humans. 97% of the Earth's productivity is appropriated or consumed by humans, us or our pets or something about humans, right? And as a result of this, most ecosystems on Earth have now shrunk to a fraction of what they used to be. And biodiversity and interactions are being lost from these small parcels. In fact, in my own work in the Western Ghats of southern India, I have shown using data from the field, some of what I described to you, and combining it with mathematical models to show that when you have a large patch of forest that is broken up into a smaller parcel, it is not able to maintain tree diversity anymore. And the reason is because interactions are lost. And again, I remind you, I looked at one interaction, and there are so many more interactions that are disappearing as we speak because our habitats are getting smaller and smaller as the human footprint grows. But I find all of this quite fascinating. And I think that there is a value to knowing this because there is a value to knowledge, right? But why should we know about any of these things? I believe that knowledge is what would make us care. I believe that when I know something, when I know biodiversity, when I can understand, there is a sense of awe, a sense of wonder, of sheer curiosity that drives me to understand the natural world. And by understanding it, I can connect better to biodiversity. And I hope that by reviving our connections to biodiversity, we will do a little better to heal the scars that we have imposed on biodiversity, to heal the world, as it were. So the next time you see a banyan tree, please do stop and look. Please stop to see all of the interactions that are going on in nature. Please try to see how nature, so many elements of nature are coming together to form, as I said, something much more than the sum of its parts. And I promise you, if you stop to look, biodiversity will have many tales to tell. Thank you.